technically I did complete my January TBR. I have a very controversial opinion on this book. Oh, ending. Whoa. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video I have my January wrap up and a few stats as well. I'm just going to add those in there this time. January was a really good reading month for me. I am a little bit shook, to be honest. If you know me and my wrap ups, they're usually fairly small. I feel like I read fast, but I spend a lot of days doing other things, so I don't get as much read, I guess. But yeah, January was a good month for me, so I'm just going to go through all the books I read, all of my thoughts on them, and yeah. Before I do that though, if you could please hit this video with a like, that would be hugely appreciated because it really supports my channel. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more bookish content from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, and I also do weekly live reading sprints on my channel every Thursday at 7 PM. So just to go over a couple of stats first of all. In January I read a total of 10 books, which I'm pretty happy with. I know that might be small to some people because some people seem to read like a book a day and I have no idea how they do it, but 10 books in a month is pretty good for me, so I am very happy with that. I also managed to read every book on my TBR except one, which again I'm really happy with because usually I set a TBR and I just completely go off the track and mood read. So yeah, that was pretty good for me, only missing one, and that one that I missed I did read at the beginning of February. So technically I did complete my January TBR, just not in the right time frame. And within those 10 books I managed to read a total of 4,267 pages, which again is quite a nice number. I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, I'm just going to go through all the books I read. I did take part in the Friendsathon hosted by Tyra and the Books, who I'll link down below. So most of the books on here, well, a lot of the books on here that were actually part of my TBR are part of prompts for that readathon, so I'll also go over the prompts and how they fitted those. So the first book that I read in February was Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. This was not on my January TBR because it really should have been read in December, but I read it just in time for our live show. If you don't know, I am a co-host for the Dosabalong, which is the Daughter of Smoke and Bone read-along that is hosted by Maddie, myself, Spoops, Ro and Katie. We have been going through all of the books in this series and doing a live show at the end of each month to discuss it. So we've actually got our last one tonight. When this video goes up, our last live show is about 3 hours from now at 8 o'clock. So if you want to go and watch that, please do. I will link it down below. But Days of Blood and Starlight, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 5 stars, as I did the first one as well. It was just incredible. Laini Taylor's writing is just so good. This has been my first experience of Laini Taylor's writing in reading these books, and I am so impressed. Like, her mind, honestly, it's amazing. The things she comes up with, her worlds are just so well thought out and so well explained, and you just get so sucked into these books. She also has the most amazing writing style. Like, the imagery she uses, I've said before, sometimes I just have to like sit and just appreciate it for a second because the imagery is just crazy. I also really love the characters in this and the romances, and I love, to be honest, I loved everything about this book. It was just incredible. It is one of my favourite fantasy series now, and I am so happy that I've read it and taken part in the read-along for these. The second book I read in January was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I actually read this one on my Kindle as an ebook. The guest list basically follows a number of characters as they go to this remote, deserted island for a wedding. And this island has some secrets, it has some history, some past that we don't know too much about, but it's all a little bit sinister. And we have 2 people who have redone a building on this island to then do weddings and events and things, and the first wedding they do is for a very high profile couple, and basically they come along, and at the beginning of the novel it basically follows 2 time frames. So you've got now, the wedding night, where suddenly a body is found and we don't know who it is and we don't know what's happened, and then we also have another time frame which we keep jumping back to, which follows up to that night and everything that happened before that, and it follows a number of perspectives, so you get a few of the characters' perspectives, and it's one of those ones where the person who is killed, there are a number of people who could have done it because of everything that you've learned about them, and it's all just very interesting. It's so fast paced, it's so dark, but not too dark, it's just a good thriller dark. and I am now a huge Lucy Foley fan. I need to read the rest of her books because it seems like she writes a very good thriller. The two time frames worked so well. I was just on edge, constantly wanting to know what was going to happen next, and I think that's a sign of a good thriller. I also felt like it was wrapped up well, and so many thrillers really struggle to do that. They have an amazing concept, and then when it comes to the end you just feel a bit like, is that it? So the guest list I gave 4 stars because I did really love it. It just didn't give me the 5-star feels. The next book I read in January was also a thriller and also an ebook, and that was Verity by Colleen Hoover. Oh my god, if you like thrillers, you need to read this book. If you have any interest in thrillers whatsoever, you need to read it. It was incredible, 5 out of 5 stars. Oh, like, it was so good. Again, it was one where you were so on edge the whole way through. It basically follows this woman who is a writer, and she is asked to write the last books in the series of a very famous author who has had an accident, who is now in a coma, and the woman who we follow moves into the house where this woman is, Verity, the woman in the coma, and she begins to form an attachment to Verity's husband while also writing her novels and looking through all of her personal belongings in her office. And in this office, one of the things she finds is a book in which it seems like a diary in which she has written things that she has done for her, to her family and things like that as we go along, and it's very dark, very twisty and interesting, and the ending, oh my god. Like, it was one of those ones where I thought we were getting to the end and I was kind of like, oh, okay, and then suddenly she just throws something right in there and you're like, whoa. Like, oh, I can't get over it. It was so good. One of the best thrillers I've ever read, and I want everyone to read it. The next book that I read in January was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this is the first book in this wrap up that was actually for the readathon that I was taking part in, and this was for Phoebe, quote, "Oh, I wish I could, but I don't want to," and the prompt was to read a book you keep putting off. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you will know that this book has been on every TBR for like the last 4 months. I finally read it, and I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. And I have a very controversial opinion on this book, it seems. I absolutely loved it for the most part. All the way up until the end, it was beautiful, both in its writing style and in the story. It was heartbreaking, it was haunting, it was so well written. Like, V.E. Schwab is an incredible writer, and as you will see in the rest of this wrap up, I have become obsessed with her writing. But the ending, it just didn't give me what I wanted. Throughout this book, obviously, I had cried a few times, I found it heartbreaking. We got to the end and I wanted this proper, like, sucker punch, heartbreaking, emotional ending, and I did not get that. I got what I perceived to be a letdown. But I'm in the minority when it comes to that opinion because so many people loved the ending to this book and loved everything about it. So that's what's great about BookTube though. We all have our own opinions, and the end of this just wasn't for me. I just didn't like it, I didn't appreciate it. I haven't actually gone over the synopsis for this one. If you don't know, it's basically about this woman called Addie LaRue who in the 1800s, I believe, makes a deal with the devil or some sort of entity in the dark to live forever but be remembered by none. So she goes through her life with no one remembering her. One of the most heartbreaking scenes is her going back after she's just made this deal, going back to her parents, and they have no idea who she is and kick her out of the house. This continues throughout, and the writing in it is beautiful. Like, not even an object can remember that she was there. So there's a scene where she spills red wine on a sofa and does nothing to clear it up because within seconds it just soaks into the sofa as if she was never there, because nothing can ever remember that she has ever been there. If anyone speaks to her, as soon as a door closes, they will completely forget that they have had any conversation with her. So she has no relationships, no friendships. She's completely alone in this world until she visits a bookshop and a young man called Henry remembers her, and the story continues from there. And like I said, it was a beautiful, emotional book, but I just did not enjoy that ending, so sorry. The next book that I read in January, it was also an ebook and was also not on my friend's TBR, but that was The Fever King by Victoria Lee. And I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. My good friend Maddie from Book Browsing Blog actually encouraged me to read this book because it's one of those ones that she believes is an incredible fantasy book but it is not talked about enough, and I completely agree. It was so good. It basically follows this young man called Noam or Gnome within this world where the fever is basically this disease that you get, and some people die from it and some people live, and if you live you then have some sort of magical power. So this fever is basically magic, and some people can stand it and some people it will kill off. If you live, you have a magical power, and there is this whole crazy, sinister, complex, corrupt government system within this, and there are refugees from areas which are have this high intensity of the fever where tons of people are dying, and I don't think I'm explaining it very well. But I don't want to give any spoilers. Basically, it was such a good book. We have incredible, likeable, complex characters. We have this complex government political system that angers you but also really, really interests you. We have some male-male romance in there, which I did not know about. I did not see coming, and when it came, I was like, oh my god, I am so here for this. But yeah, it was an incredible book, and I cannot wait to read the sequel, which is The Electric Air, which is out. And I have not read yet, but I plan to read very, very soon because I've heard it is just as good as the first one. The next book I read in January was The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow, and this was on my TBR. This was for Chandler's prompt. The quote was, "I tend to keep talking until someone stops me," and the prompt was read a book over 500 pages, and this one is about 515 or something like that, so it fit the prompt. This was my book of the month. Basically, in my bullet journal each month I have at the end of it my favourite book of the month, where I'll put a photo of my favourite book of the month, and this was it for January. And to be honest, this could be my favourite book of the year. Like, that is how much I loved this book. Obviously I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It has my whole heart, and I am seriously starting to doubt that anything will top it this year, because this has become probably my favourite book of all time. I loved it. If you watch my vlog where I read this book, I basically just gushed over it the entire time. I will link it up above and down below in case you want to watch me be so passionate about my love for this book. This basically follows 3 sisters, the Eastwood sisters, Juniper, Agnes and Bella, and it is set in 1893, I believe, in a time where witches are no longer around as far as we are aware, but they have been around before, and we know all about sort of Salem and the witches being burned and hung and everything like that. But then these 3 sisters join the new suffragists of New Salem, and they begin to explore these forgotten ideas of witchcraft and bring that in to help them with the women's movement. And this book, honestly, like I said, it has my whole heart. It is incredible, it's emotional, and it is so empowering. Like, I've never read anything that has made me feel so empowered as a woman. There are such strong, ferocious, powerful characters in this, and there are so many lines in it that just make you feel so proud to be a woman and just so, yeah, empowered. And there's so much in here about friendship and sisterhood. We've got a female-female romance. Like, oh, I just absolutely adored this book, if you could not tell, and I am now trying to force everyone else in the world to read it. The next book I read in January was Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. Again, this was actually on my friend's TBR, and this was for Ross's quote, "I tell you, when I actually die, some people are going to be seriously haunted," and that was to read a book with ghosts. So Cemetery Boys basically follows this young man called Yadriel, who is a young transgender boy who is struggling to be himself within the community he's in. He's in a very traditional Latinx family who have their whole system of magic that is very much based on gender, and he believes that the way to prove who he is to his family and to the rest of his community is to perform a ritual that only a boy or man can perform to find a spirit and set it free. And he tries to do that with his cousin Miguel, but he actually summons a different ghost, which is Julian, who is the school's resident bad boy, and the story goes from there. We have, again, a male-male romance in here. We have action, we have adventure, we have this incredible exploration of like the Latinx community and this whole magic system that they have. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it, but again, it just didn't give me those 5-star feels. It was just something missing for me, and to be honest, I don't think I could put my finger on what that was, but sometimes I just don't get those feels, and that was one of them. But I love the characters in this. I love the exploration of a young transgender boy trying to find his way in the world within quite a traditional community. I loved the systems with ghosts. Like, the whole idea of ghosts and how that was done in this was just so interesting, and yeah, the whole thing was just a thrilling, fun, emotional, interesting ride, and I loved it. The next book I read in January was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Again, this was on my January TBR. This was for Joey's quote, "Joey doesn't share food," and the prompt was to read a book with food on the cover, and we have various fruits on this absolutely beautiful cover. This book follows a young woman called Imoni who is 17 years old, still at school, and has a 2-year-old daughter, and it's all about her trying to juggle her life as a mother while also still being at school, the judgment that comes with, the criticism that comes with, and also how she uses cooking to escape from her world and to feel like herself and feel truly happy. And this book was amazing. Like, if you don't know, I absolutely love Elizabeth Azevedo. I discovered her last year and read The Poet X and Clap When You Land and gave them both 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved them. They are both written in verse though, and so this is the first one I have read of hers that is written in prose, but it does read just as fast as those. Like, I flew through this book. It just flows so well. You can tell Elizabeth Azevedo is a very accomplished writer. Even this kind of felt like it was in verse, if that makes sense. And she doesn't put anything in there that you don't need, if that makes sense. There are so many people who waffle. She does not waffle. She just puts lots of interesting, succinct things into this book, and I really appreciate that. I loved the character of Imoni. She was so strong as a woman, as a young woman, while also navigating this world that she was in that was trying to put her down, and I loved that. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Again, there was just something missing, and I don't even know if that was maybe just the mood I was in when I was reading this, to be honest, because I did love it to pieces. The romance in this as well, I just thought was so well done, because the boy that she has like this sort of growing, budding romance with is so understanding of her world and of like her life, and does not judge her in any way. And you can see her, obviously at first she is all about her child, and she's very strong in the fact that she is not going to go into any other sort of relationship, and you see her sort of break down as the book goes on and start to do things for herself as well, and it was just beautiful. I love Elizabeth Azevedo with my whole heart. The next book I read in January was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This again was for my January TBR, and that was for Monica's quote 7, to read a book with 7 letters in the title, which we have here in Vicious. This book is what is finally cemented in my mind that I love V.E. Schwab so much. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. If you don't know, this book follows Victor and Eli, who are 2 young men who start off in university, and they are studying EOs, or extraordinaries, who are people with powers. Again, some more fantasy in there, and they find out that in order to become an extraordinary or an EO, you must go through a near-death experience and live through it, obviously. So they decide to do that to themselves so that they can have powers. And then suddenly we are jumping to 10 years ahead, where Victor has just been released from prison and he's going after his now foe Eli, who is on a mission to eradicate every other superpowered person in the world. This book was amazing. It was a wild, fast, thrilling, gripping ride with amazing characterization. Like, if no character in this is good. They're all morally grey, they all have their goods and bad sides, so you almost find yourself siding with everyone, if that makes sense. There are bits about everyone that you can relate to and you can understand. There are bits about everyone that are wrong and you cannot agree with, but also sometimes you can agree with, and even though they're doing something bad, you can understand why they're doing it. If that makes sense. That's what I loved about it, is the whole way through, like, I loved these characters because they were so complex and because they were so morally grey, and I would completely change my opinion on each character as we went along, as they did different things and as we found out more about their background. And yeah, so well written, so gripping, so thrilling, and again, V.E. Schwab, new favourite author. So of course, after I read that, next book I read in January was Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I just had to go straight onto the sequel because I needed to know what happened next, and I wanted to stay in that world that I'd been sucked into because I loved it so much. Obviously, I can't really give a synopsis of this one because spoilers, but it stays in the world that I have just explained, but we have more characters come in, and one of those characters is Marcella. And she is one of my all-time favourite characters. Like, I loved her so much. I loved seeing her progression throughout this novel. She is a badass, strong woman who does not take any prisoners. And yes, again, some of the things she does are bad. They are very bad, but again, you can understand why she's doing them. And I just loved how she had no apologies for who she was or what she was doing. She was just a strong woman set out in what she was doing, and I love her. This one particularly, there were so many strong female characters in here, and if you know me, I love a strong female character. Again, all of them morally grey, all of them navigating within this world they find themselves in, and all doing it in different ways and trying to still be true to themselves and be strong. And I just really, really loved it, if you could not tell. This series, a new all-time favourite fantasy series. It was just incredible. I read both books within a matter of days because I just could not put them down, and I just wanted to stay in this amazing, complex, interesting, gripping world, and yeah, love them. So that is it for my January wrap up. Like I said, I read a total of 10 books in January and they are falling all over me. All of the books that I read in January as well were 4 or 5-star books, which that is a good month. We're not going to talk about the already start of February and how that has not lived up to January. We'll talk about that at the end of the month. But as always, if you did enjoy this video, then do please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe for more bookish content from me. Comment down below with any of your thoughts and feelings, and I will see you in my next one.